Hello, welcome to the December 12th, 2023 Club QBasis livestream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the livestream. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field or submit questions in advance via clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase you're running, whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, which version number, whether it's 11, 12, or 13, and which operating system, that information is helpful. When asking questions, realize that my ability to answer questions in real time will soon be eclipsed. I will try my best throughout the live stream to catch up, so if you don't see an immediate response to your question when you type it in, just give me a couple minutes and I'll, sometimes I may be 30 to 40 minutes behind, but I'll go through all the questions chronologically as they are asked. And we should have, if we do that, if you don't see an immediate response, if we could try to avoid asking the same question repeatedly, that just kind of slows down the whole process. We should have the index of all topics that are discussed in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field. And if you wanted to search for the comments and with timestamps, so it'll take you right to that point in the video. You could also go to cubaseindex.com, and we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that website. We also want to give special thanks to Agent K and Jazz Dude. They're not Steinberg employees, but they serve as moderators to make it a more pleasant community experience, so we'll give special thanks to them. Also, we'll give a special shout out to Jazz Dude for his work with the Cubase Nation Discord. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, which is the U.S. distributor of Steinberg products, and I'm the host. So if you're watching this, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And with that, we will go ahead and begin. All right, so we have Lauren asks, okay, hi Greg, how to remove reverb from a sample in SpectraLayers Pro. All right, so if we have reverb on a sample, we could do, let's say we have maybe something with reverb on it. What we could do is, if we're in SpectraLayers Pro, so if we just kind of say, we'll just kind of start off from scratch here. All right, so let's say we have kind of sample. All right, so what we could do now is we're going to go to the SpectraLayers extension. So we're going to select the track. We'll go to our extension. We'll go to SpectraLayers. And then what you need to do is, if you go to the process, you go to process, and then you'll see reverb reduction. And then once you kind of click there, you could choose whether it's going to be for voice or other. And at that point, just hit the apply button. And it'll come over here, do its processing. All right, we'll close that particular processing as we listen to it now. Then we should hear it. Just try it on another file here. All right, so again, we'll come to track, we'll load up our SpectraLayers extension, process to reverb reduction. and that's all you have to do. So once you're in SpectraLayers, just come over and choose reverb reduction. You could also do ambience match or reverb match between two different files. All right. Next question from Esmeralda. I've created 3 MIDI tracks with the sampler track. I can use expression maps to, how can I use expression maps to activate control change with these 3 MIDI channels in the key editor instead of using key switches? So, when we're dealing with the sampler track is, there's probably not going to be a lot of particular key switches that are going on. So let's come over here. Let's just say, if I take, so if I drag this over, we're going to have in our sampler track. So as we come over here, now a lot of times when you're doing key switches in a particular sampler track, when you're dealing with key switches, you want to switch between one sound to another sound to another sound. The sampler track itself only has one sample, so it's only going to be working with one particular sound. So there isn't, it may not make much sense because it can't switch between different layers of sounds. What it could do is switch between, so like a traditional sampler like HALion or even Groove Agent, you could, create, like HALion is designed for doing key switches where you have, multiple layers of samples, kind of like what we showed on the last live stream of doing key switches. But when we utilize the sampler track, and when we come over here, we have our MIDI information, since this sampler track is going to be tied directly to this track, this track is only going to have one sample, so we can't necessarily switch between the different sampler tracks within one, where a key switch would make sense, or to be able to use expression maps. So let me know if that makes sense, Esmeralda. But since it's a single sample format, that it may not make sense to do that, but you could do it as we showed on the last live stream using HALion with different key switches. All right, wonderful to see Stefan from Sweden joining us, and we have Senz1 saying hello from Phoenix. So hey Greg, what is the best way to resample quickly in Cubase using Cubase 11? So I'm not sure, there's different people may have different terminology for resampling. So if you wanted to, let's say I have this file, if I wanted to, some people consider this resampling, where we go to audio and I want to create a new sample of this, I could do a bounce selection and replace the events. If it is dealing with like a sample rate change, at that point, if you're changing sample rate, you could go to the project menu to project setup, or hit shift plus the letter S, and then you could just choose your sample rate directly there, and then you could just do a project. So if I wanted to do a sample rate on an entire project, let's say I'll take this one, so if it's a sample rate issue, so let's say now I select files, we can see that our files are 44.1, and let's say if we don't want to change the pitch, so just to get our kind of pitch and timing reference. So if I wanted to change this from 44.1 to 48K, what we could do is come over and go to the project menu to project setup, and say we're going to go from 44.1 to 48K. We'll hit OK. It says, do you want to convert audio files to the new rate? We'll say convert. Do you want to keep the source files? We'll keep them. Why not? Do you want to keep the audio events at their sample positions? Here, you probably want to choose no. So now as we play it back, now all of our audio is at 48K, but it's the same pitch and same timing as it was in 44.1. So let me know, Sense1, if that makes sense, and just make sure I understand what you mean by resample quickly. All right, Cycling is Awesome asks, hi Greg, could you show please how to automate EQ high low cut on a track? Thanks. Okay, so let's say I want to take, I'll just take kind of the overall mix on this. So I wanted to EQ, I wanted to automate the EQ. So whatever track you're on, you just want to click on the W button, and then all you have to do is we'll grab our EQ. So I'll just move this one band. And now everything that we just did will be automated. We'll play it back. And that's all you'd have to do for automation on the EQ. So just click on W and then move the EQ as you want, and then it will be automated. Wonderful to see Jazz Dude checking in from Germany. We have Cubase Index, Jan from Stockholm. Glad you guys could both make it. All right, we have it's great, wonderful to see John Barry from the English Riviera. Thanks for joining. Okay, we have Robbie Becky on. All right, so we have Vinay, just says from India, the beat calculators missing in Cubase 13 in today's update also, please advise. That's the most important tool. So you could actually, figure it out. A lot of the functionality exists already in Cubase. So let's say I just wanted to drag we'll do new project, and I just want to come over here to, so, it's kind of replaced with the tap tempo functionality, but we'll show you something a lot of people may not use. So let's say, just find something with, okay, so say I want to drag over a loop here. So let's go ahead and just kind of, so right now we have this not set to musical mode. So say, let me just find something that's more as like even number of beats quickly. All right, so say I'm going to drag this loop over. So what I want to do with this particular loop is I'm just going to count the number of beats in it. So I'm going to select it, make sure it's not in musical mode. All right, so now we could I'm going to just come over here, and just like what we would do in the beat calculator before, is I'm going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. All right, so it's 16 beats. So when I go into my sample editor, we could go to our definition, and we could say this is equal to however many bars that we want. And we can see that when I go to, okay, this is going to be 4 bars. At this point, it's automatically calculated the tempo. So most of the functionality is going to be just handled in a definition tab right here. inside. So if you wanted to figure out what the actual tap tempo was before, so you could, and if you wanted to do a tap tempo, you could now come over, and with the update today, you could just say display only, and you could just tap, and then that will show you the tempo that you have. So if you need to find for, you know, like I need to select this is 4 beats long, we could figure out what the tempo is and put the event into musical mode right here from within the sample editor in the definition tab, or you could use the tap tempo, and here there's additional functionalities that were added in the maintenance release to 13.02 that was released today. So let me know if there's anything else specifically you're missing with the beat calculator. All right, Dallas LaRue asks, in Steinberg Library Manager, when it has an install again option, does that mean the application has an update? Let me just clear my throat, sorry. Okay, so Dallas LaRue, in Steinberg Library Manager, when it has install again option, does that mean that the application has an update? If not, how do you check for plugin updates? So generally you would, you know, when you go, and I guess this is in the Steinberg download assistant. So once you go to the Steinberg download assistant and we see that something has been installed, so I'll just go to open it. So the library assistant does it with kind of like content libraries for particular plugins. When it says install again, that means that it was in fact installed, and that if you wanted to do it, you could install again. So, you know, if you go to your library, like this README I haven't installed, you know, or I haven't installed this SpectraLayers from here. So if it needs to be installed, when I go to my products, I can see that install again means that it is installed and I could install it one more time. But if it just says install, this indicates that it has not been installed yet. So at that point you just need, so install again means that it has been installed. And if you just go to your products here, you could say, okay, I need to install HALion 702 from here. So at this point you could just see, so when it does say install again, that means that it is already installed and you could install it one more time, like a reinstall. If it says install, that means you haven't installed it from here. All right, wonderful to see Zephaniah from Detroit. All right, so we have Ted Carpenter. It says, welcome to the live stream. It says, hi Greg, I'm Ted Carpenter from DC. All right, glad to have someone else in DC area. Can you demonstrate some of the new functionality in 13 regarding chord progressions in chord pads / chord track? Thanks. Okay, so let's take a look. All right, I'll just revert. All right, so there's some new functionality for like chord pads, more so. So let's say if we have, so I'll come over here. Let's say we have a Rhodes and I go to my chord pad. So these have been kind of consolidated a lot. So we can, if we turn on our chord pads, we can now just say, okay, what? Should be, try one our project here real quick. So let's do new project. Sorry about that. All right, so let's say now we have kind of our chord pads. All right, so some of the new things that you'll see in chord pads is it used to be that we would have to have like different presets for different functions, for if we wanted something to be in C minor, C sharp minor, D minor, E flat minor, F minor, etc. So now we could have a project root key. So we can say, okay, I want to keep this chord progression, but just move everything up to D or move everything down. So we could modulate and set different root keys. So as we kind of work now, how we can also just kind of switch between our different chords. So a lot of times there was kind of previous ways that you could. So if I just hold down the shift key, we could transpose. If we hold down the alt or option key for each of the chords that are selected, we can now come over and set our different tensions. And if we just use our mouse scroll wheel, so using the scroll wheel with the shift key, transposes, just moving our scroll wheel allows us to do different inversions or chord voicings, and the alter option, different tensions. So much more easy to kind of navigate between those different elements. When we go to kind of our chord setup here, we could say, okay, I see my chord editor. We can now also see our circle of fifths. We could choose our circle of fifths to be major or minor. So if we wanted to just toggle back and forth, and we could also, instead of having to double click to open a window to get to our chord definition, we could see our chord definition just laid out directly for us here. When we go to our settings, we could choose to also see these by note name or by Roman numerals. Or if you want to do like Nashville number system, you could do those types of things very quickly and have it displayed, your chords, not just in kind of, so this way we could just choose your different chords. And if you wanted to say, okay, I want a 1, 5, 6 in Roman numerals, or 1, 6, 4, 5, with 7 in bass, 4 in Nashville numbers, we could choose to do that. One of the things that's also been updated is as we work with our chords, I could come over and we could have, again, kind of our typical piano or guitar chord voicings. We could have different styles for the voicings here. So if you want something more complex, one of the things that has also been updated is when we go to patterns, and we can see we can now come over here to piano mappable. So if I want to do more, so if I wanted to take a pattern and let's say, okay, I come here and we'll put on my metronome, and I'll just take off my loop. Sorry about that. And now it's as if we kind of played all those parts when we look at it in the MIDI editor. When working with the chord track, it's also been it's been simplified how to work with the chord track. Or before we get to that, I'll show you one other thing. So let's say if I really like this particular pattern, so let's say I'm just going to take measure 3 and 4. One of the things that we could do now is come over and say, okay, I like this particular pattern for the chords. Is we can now just take the pattern and drop the MIDI pattern right in. So you could take any part and use that as the basis for the particular chord pad patterns. When adding a chord track, so we'll just come over here, add a chord track. We can now also do step entry. So we can say, okay, I just want to start D minor, C, and then I could say, okay, we're going to keep the C chord for a little bit. Let's get a G, 2 bars. I want it to be a C major 7, G7, G minor, and now we could just populate the chord track based upon step entry from the particular chord pad. So instead of always having to drag them out, you could just put them into step entry mode. So when playing back the patterns, something else that you may notice is there's a change where we could say show the pattern play progress. So as I play a particular chord here, you could see how long that pattern is going to last. So if it's like 3 bars, you could just have that. So again, there's lots of great patterns that are just kind of included. So if you're not, and then you can see exactly how long that pattern lasts for with this little visual indicator. Just right there. And when looking for chord suggestions, again, if we just kind of double click here, we could, let's say we go to our chord editor, and again, we could just say, okay, I want to come up with the list. It will show you based on cadence or common notes. So other chords that will be musically related, and you'll notice that these colors, based upon how close harmonically they are, the colors of the chord pads will also change to reflect that. So it's a couple things. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Ted. Wonderful to see Uno Memento checking in from Finland. All right, and we have Ross checking in from Southwest France, where it's cold and wet. So thanks for joining us today. All right, so we have Frederick Childs says, hi, Greg. Fred from Atlanta, QBase 13 Pro, experiencing freeze problems. Any insights? Thanks. So if you could let me know, which operating system you're working with. If also what audio interface, which QBase, so you said QBase 13 Pro, but if you could let me know. So a lot of times it could be something, what I've seen a lot of freeze issues where stuff is kind of happening is like USB bus power issues where a lot of people have different components connected. Like, I did this and I put a USB hard drive and connected that to my computer, and now everything is very lethargic. So check your USB ports. If you have a powered hub, always use a powered hub because a lot of times the USB power settings, if you're on Windows, if you go to your studio menu to studio setup, make sure that you're using multi-processing, activate ASIO guard for Mac or Windows. On a Windows side, you'll also see in the audio system setup where you could use the Steinberg power scheme. So set that as well. And you may want to go into your BIOS and make sure that your USB ports don't go and pause and kind of go into like an eco-friendly green mode that takes less power. All right, so we see Greg, is there a way to see the names of the instruments within the GM drum sets of HALion SE, now HALion 7? I'd like to know what instrument is on what notes before playing it. So a lot of times when you go to, let's take a look. So let's add an instrument track. We'll do a HALion Sonic, and let's go to all right, so let's say we come over here to our jazz kit. All right, so let's see. I know some of these may work, so let's see if we take a look, and let's go to our drum map. So, you know, the drum maps are pretty stable. So what you may want to do is just to come over and just see the GM map. And now as you kind of work with this, as we go into your drum editor, you could see the different drum sounds directly here. But there's probably other drum maps that are available for all of the general MIDI, but you know, generally most of the general MIDI kits will comply to have kind of very similar sounds, so that as you kind of click on it, but you know, you could do that, but you know, so check out, and there may be the other general MIDI drum maps are probably somewhere online. If you want to send me an email, I'd be happy to see if I could dig them up, and we could probably get it uploaded into the particular, you know, maybe into the QBase Nation Discord. But you know, generally with the drums, and you know, and you could just on the particular drum sounds, you could come over, and as you just kind of drop in, let me just create an event here. These may all be set to the wrong MIDI channel. And as you just click here, you know, you could always make your own drum map for all those. And I'm sure that there's different general MIDI drum maps that are available. But let's say if you go to your drum map setup, you can now come over here and you could choose to kind of audition your different sounds and just kind of type the name in and save the drum map like that. All right, so Peter asks, is it possible to use math to control knobs like LFO, etc., like FL Studio Formula Controller, like sine curves or random? So if we have a particular, so let's come over, let's just add an instrument track. Let's do retrolog. Okay, so now I want to come over here. We could go to like our MIDI inserts, and we'll say, let's come over to our auto LFO. So let's say I just want to have different shapes here. And I'm going to just learn the CC, and I'll move this parameter. So now we can say, I'm just going to assign the CC. Okay, so let's say we'll make this CC 10. All right, so we've assigned this parameter to CC10. So now as I would play back, we could activate kind of the auto LFO plugin. So let's say, okay, we want to come over and have our cycle length. Let's make sure that we're transmitting. Alright, and we should be seeing kind of the just make sure that this is set up to receive. So whatever is kind of set up here, we could just have, let me just match this one more time, see if I get this to respond. Let me just, all right, let me just do cut off. So that'll be a little easier. A little more obvious. Okay. Okay. So I must be having just kind of a brain cramp with this, but usually it just kind of does the auto LFO for that and roll control. Now what else you could do is we could go to this particular instrument and say, let's show the filter cutoff, and then you could go through your different sine tools here. So let's say I want to take, we'll take a long note here. Okay, and now I just grab my line tool and let's kind of draw in. Okay, so now that I play, the auto LFO is working. Sorry about that. All right, so now that I come over here, we could just so now if we open this up, this plugin is now just doing the LFO and controlling those particular parameters. And then if you want to change shapes, so I just forgot to put it in play. So in having a note there, then the LFO plugin will automatically, so you need to assign the MIDI CC and then have this auto LFO just trigger that particular CC. And you get different LFO shapes. And so you'll make the 16th notes. So that's how you can do some LFO stuff with the Auto LFO plugin. All right, we have Arif B checking in from Holland. Thanks for joining us. All right, so Neo Dungle Experience says, hey Greg, how do you connect a sound card, a cheap one without a driver, to computer in Cubase? So if you don't have, as long as it has a Windows driver, if it doesn't have an ASIO driver, what you could do is go to your studio menu to Studio Setup, and on New Audio System, you'll see anything that's connected to your Mac on the Windows platform. You will probably see a generic ASIO low latency driver, and then as you do that, you'll see select it, and then you'll see a control panel, and then you could, as long as your operating system is seeing it, you could then choose which you could route the audio in and out from that right there. So if you need to use like the built-in audio interface of your audio of a laptop, you could do that as well. So again, go to Studio menu to Studio Setup and go to your audio system. It's probably generic low latency ASIO driver. Select that and then go into the control panel and make sure that's going out to the correct device. Okay, so we see George Robinson says, greetings Greg, Jazz Dude, and all working in chat from George in Atlanta. Enjoying Cubase 13 Pro. Question, can you customize zoom settings 1 through 5, or are they locked to the size? Thanks. Okay, so let's just give it a shot. Okay, so we just all right, so let's just come over here. All right, so you could have different kind of zoom presets here, but we'll just come over and just on this little drop down menu here. So let's say we want to add. All right, so let's say I just want this to be full project. So we'll just come here, add, I'll call this GR1. Okay, so let's say we want this. So again, we'll add, and we'll say, let's go to GR2. And let's zoom in on like one track. And add, we'll say GR3. Okay, so let's give this a try and see if they all kind of show up. So, all right, so we'll say, let's go back to GR1. All right, so it looks like it's going to maintain the horizontal zoom. All right, and let's go to GR2. So it's very small. And if we go back to GR3, So you could maintain kind of your zoom settings kind of right just directly there, and you could organize these as you want. So let me know if that's what you want to do, George. So again, just this little drop down menu here. All right. So Nick is saying, hi people, I heard all the cool people press the like button. So Alexander Plasko asks, hi Greg, when is QBase 14 coming out? Just kidding. So I usually get that on the QBase 13 walkthrough video, so I'm surprised it's taken this long. It's almost a month before someone asked. So when it's ready. All right. All right, so we have the artist known as Love, just checking in from New York. Says, thank you, Greg. Everyone, please hit the like button. Thank you. All right, so we see Minac, Banerjee, 808 glides like FL Studio. So I'm not familiar with FL Studio, but we can show you how to do some glides here quickly. Just look, I think we have it under. So you can do it in the sampler track. So it really could depend upon the instrument. So let's just say when we want to come over, we're going to have, let's say, just a particular sampler track, kind of like. All right, so let's say I want to do a glide with that particular bass, and let's say I have. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go to my sampler track, and I'm going to just drop this in. And then what we could do is just kind of come over, and under pitch, we could just set our glide. So we'll now just. So if we have this set, we could set this to monophonic mode. So as soon as we want to come here, we could just, okay, let's put it into monophonic mode. So, and as soon as we do that, so if I want that glide to be or I want it to be faster, so we could just, and we could also put this into, if we click on this, we could put it into legato mode. So I could just actually just take one particular as I play. So just come over, and then you could even at this point just say, okay, I want to have just my, we could put it into finger mode as well. And if you want it to be slower, you could just adjust the rate. Or you want it to be faster. So play around with the sampler track and check out the monophonic modes with the glide settings. I think that will get you what you want. All right. All right, so we see from John Barry, he says, feature request for the search in the commands to be a little less specific. Try searching for capital Q-link. Unless you are case specific, it will not find it. Cheers. All right, so let's take a look. So say I just all right, so say I just go to Q. All right, I'll try lowercase q with a dash. So here even like Q-Link, so maybe it's the dash, but it seems like if I just type in, you see if there's no dash. But let's see if I just type in link. So we can see that link will show up whether it's capitalized or not. So if I say link here, so it doesn't seem like it's capital that's doing it. Let's say if I say Q, we see Q-Link shows up. So but let's just type in Q without the dash. Yeah, okay, so I'll mention that the dashes maybe shouldn't be in, but if you just, it doesn't seem like it's uppercase or lowercase, but maybe the dash is what could be triggering it. But I'll mention that, John. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. All right, wonderful to see Rob from Tarpon Springs, Florida. All right, so we see Sounds by Timo. I'll clear my throat. All right, I'm going to get something to drink real quick. Hang on. All right, sorry about that. Okay. So Sounds by Timo asks, question, Cubase Pro 12 keeps saving multiple of the same project, 25 at a time. How do I delete them all at once on recent project window? All right, so your recent project list will show, your recent projects as you've opened them. So I'm not sure if you're, if you're manually, because usually there's a preference in Cubase. So if you go under preferences to general, that will create backup files. So you could choose to have backup files. Those don't show up in the particular list. So if we had backup files, you wouldn't see those in the recent projects list. But if you are incrementally, if you're doing the save new version, Cubase isn't going to automatically create save projects unless you manually do it that appear here. So let me know if you're doing a save as or save new version. But generally when Cubase is making an automatic backup, at that point, it won't show up in the list. It's only going to show up in the list because it's a different file extension. It's a .bak file. It only shows up in the list when you do a save as or save new version, and that's triggered by the user. So let me know if that's how you're doing the saving. All right, so we have Yorgo checking in from Lebanon. Thanks for joining us. right, sorry, my chat field jumped. All right, so we have PETA says, hey, from Punk Rock Pete in Austin, Texas. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we see Matt Elders. It says, hi, Greg, Matt from Canada here. I just bought VST Connect, and I'm trying to record an entire drum kit with 10 tracks. How can I set this up to see the mono tracks separately? So generally, once you do like your VST Connect, so let's say I do my VST Connect here. I don't have my other computer kind of set up. So, but once I don't have my other computer set up to show it, but you know, you should see all of the available inputs on the performer side. And as soon as you do it, you'll see like a, you know, you'll have, I think, like different stereo. So you'll have like a VST Connect. And when you go to like the mono track on the mono input, try setting it to, you know, VST Connect like 1L, VST Connect 1R, 2L, 2R, etc. I could have it for Friday's live stream set up with my other computer, so I could show it. But please send me an email reminder. I'd be happy to get that set up. I just don't have my other computer in the room with me. All right, wonderful to see Gerald Ely on from Martinez, California, and great to see John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. All right, so we see Steve Allen, who asks, hi, Greg and all, Cubase 13 Pro PC, mixers 2 and 4, racks remain open as expected, but 1 and 3 opening exclusively as C12. Option is unchecked on all 4 mixers. Bug, am I missing something? So there was a maintenance release that was released today that will probably take care of that for you, Steve. So make sure that you're running the 13.02 version. And I think that was one of the elements that was addressed in the latest maintenance release. All right, so we see Love Cubase asks, how can one use chord suggestions within the jazz music style? So let's say we come over, we add a chord track. You know, so a lot of times when you're, you know, different music genres will have different chord progressions. So there's not going to be anything that does like the chord progressions can be, you know, set. You could do the chord voicings that you could set up for more kind of jazz styles. Like when we go to our options, you could have more like the voicings be more jazz, but if you want like more of like chord track suggestions, then what you could do is, you know, as you go to the what I would do is, let's say we go to the editor, so we're going to start, let's say, an F. Okay, so let's say we go to our chord assistant and we look at circle of fifths. So here we could say, okay, I'm going to start with F as tonic. So I want to go my next chord. We could just click plus. Let's go to B flat. You know, a lot of jazz is circle of fifths. So we'll go A flat. And then let's say we want to do a turnaround. So we'll say, okay, I want to go to C back to F. So using kind of the circle of fifths is a very classic jazz progressions, but you know, progressions could work well in jazz or rock or pop. But, just realizing that, a lot of jazz stuff, a very typical chord progression may be like, at this point, let's say, okay, we want to do like a 2-5-1. So we'll say, okay, let's get a G minor to C to F. So, at this point we could, continue to populate chords. So there's nothing that will say, make it a jazz chord progression versus a Baroque chord progression. But if if you're unsure on a lot of particular chord tracks, you want to do more jazz, definitely kind of play around with the circle of fifths. So basically you have you go around the circle, and then at some point you do a turnaround back to your tonic key. So that's a very typical jazz progression style. So we see Patrick Emanuel A asks, "Hi Greg, in the future will there be QBase, because an article says like AI can make DAW do everything just with neurons connected with AI data. I'm frustrated. Is it true? What Pro Composer says, is it a threat?" So, I think like probably the most advanced form that I've seen, I remember talking with Tom Hulkenberg, Junkie XL, about this, and he thought that like the best thing that was available was maybe okay for doing something like background music for YouTube, like background for a video. So I wouldn't be depressed, because I think that if a lot of people are getting your music replaced by AI, it's a chance to up your game so that it's not going to be replaced. So I think that people will still be wanting to create, and people have kind of an innate need to create themselves and to have that emotional connection that you may not get from AI for a long time. It's obviously a very interesting topic, but I don't think that great composers are going to be, I think people will always appreciate great composers. And just even now with like text and written words, I'm sure we could all go read different stories that come across your social media feeds, or a newspaper story, or just an article, and you could tell what was written in AI versus what was written by a human. So I think that there's kind of an unquantifiable thing. I think the AI technology will always get better, but I think that people will evolve to create better than what the AI is doing. So don't be discouraged. I think it's just a quick way maybe to get something created, but I wouldn't be discouraged by it. I would be maybe inspired to do something better and to elevate the whole art form. All right, so we see from Ted Carpenter, extremely helpful. Thanks, Craig. All right. And just like another comment, like I just did my first, on topic of AI, I just did my first kind of orchestral performance in 30 years plus. And I think kind of the emotional connection that you have of, musicians playing together is not something that could be as easily replicated in AI. That emotional connection of 65, 70 people playing together as a single ensemble. So. All right, reading through comments. It's the influential Gerning says future music is silent. All right, so we see, hi Greg, is there, Mozizo 11, hi Greg, is there a way to measure loop tempo with the range selection now that the beat calculator is removed from Cubase 13? The new tap tempo is not the same. All right, so let's take a look. So just import just kind of random file here. All right, so let's say see if we get this going for just a range selection. Try just within. Yeah, I don't know a way to do this kind of with the beat calculator, but I'll pass that along as well. So I know that for doing tempo maps with the like Cubase elements, that was kind of losing a feature, but I'll pass that along. So we don't have to necessarily cut and render. All right, so Lauren asks, is it possible to save custom expression note presets that have been used on specific MIDI notes as presets? So I'm not sure if it's, let me just go to a different project. So let's say we're all right, so let me know, Lauren, if it's what you mean by the expression or like the expression maps here. So if you wanted to save like these particular expression maps, so let's see if we, let's say if I take these and I copy, so I don't think that they can be saved independently, but let's say if I wanted to now, we could paste them later in time. But I'm not sure if it's with the note expressions or like the expression map articulations. Those would probably, make more sense. So, these expression maps can be saved by going into your expression map setup. And once you have that done, you could save those. But I'm just going to reread the question, make sure I'm not. So custom expression note presets have been used. Or if it is where you want, so maybe Lauren, if you could specify if you wanted this, like where we just say, when we double click on a note, that you want these particular note expression editor. So if you wanted these to be preserved, and if you want those preserved, I mean, those could be, I think if we if we go to import tracks from project, we could import those, but obviously it's going to be, I'm not sure if having a preset of that, because it could depend solely on the note length. So maybe, Lauren, if you could specify what expression note presets that you're looking for, whether it's more articulations or more of like the note expression level, kind of more MPE style MIDI 2.0 stuff. All right, so we see how can one create an instrument in a sampler track without compromising its quality in higher notes using the new algorithm. Okay, so let's come over. So with the QBase 13, there's lots of more, there's new stretching algorithms for the sampler track. So I'm going to come over here to the sampler control. I'll drop the guitar in here. So let's say, so this is the original pitch. So if I wanted to play it up, and I'll just put on audio warp here, so it's going to play it back to the same speed. That's the original pitch, so let's go up a perfect fifth. So now that we could switch our modes, we could switch to like Spectral HD. It's our original. Or Spectral HD vocal. So probably Spectral HD is more. So you could just kind of change. So probably Spectral HD is the best one. So that's all you have to do is just put enable audio warp, and then you can put it into Spectral HD, or Spectral voice modes for the stretching. Okay. Okay, so we see how to create a macro to, question is how to create a macro to hide all tracks except the selected track and the vocal track. Okay. Okay, so let's say if we come over here, we're going to have Vox. Okay, so I want to take, let's go to our project logical editor. And we could do something. Okay, so we want to select, so our container type is track, and we'll say the property is set to, is selected, and we'll say or name contains, let's say Vox, and you may have to type in VO, VOC, VO, vocal. So if I do this correctly, and then so we're going to select, we want to select tracks that are selected, and so I'll just select this track. So I want to do this track and a track that has the word Vox in it, and we could put other conditions, vocals, VO, so that will select all of those particular tracks. And what we want to do now is we'll go to our channel and track visibility. And we'll say, let's show all channels that are selected. Okay, so we'll say show tracks with selected events. Let's see if that. Show only selected channels. All right, so right now I have, let's say, only my USM Rhodes is selected, and then I want to select and hide everything else. So we're going to select container type is tracks, and then we want to they're going to be selected, or they contain the name contains Vox, and then we're going to hide the rest of them. So come here, and then every other track is now hidden. So if we wanted to just come back, and we'll show all tracks. So again, I can now just come here. Let's say, okay, I want my bass selected. So now we'll see bass and tracks with Vox in the name, or vocals, and you could add different derivations as you want. So you could just set that up as a project logical editor. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, so he's Jesse from Got Yours. Says, looks like they fixed a lot of issues on the 13.02, except sounds like some graphic issues still. Maybe I'll try it now, 60 days to test. Do you have to purchase first? So you could run the trial version is now available, and you don't have to purchase it. All right, so we see how does VariAudio question, how does VariAudio automatically detect all the transients in an audio file? Thank you, Mr. Greg. So, it's really just part of the algorithm when we work with that. So let's say if we're here, we go to our VariAudio. So it's going to, now as we do our analysis of it, and maybe I'll just reset. We'll reanalyze the audio. So as it does that, it's going to figure out kind of where the consonants are rhythmically, and and it just kind of, it's part of the algorithm of the detection, so that as we listen to particular words and our different vocal inflections. So, and then if you need to kind of clean up, like, let's say where it could be pretty common to kind of drift flat at the end of the notes. If you just go to the right edge, you could make your adjustments there, but it's just part of the analysis and detection algorithm for that. All right, so we see Jun Ho Seo says, I updated 13. Been using it for about a week now. I'm getting errors. I ended up going back to 12. So there is a maintenance release that was just released just this morning. So make sure you get 13.02. All right, so you have David Griffiths checking in from an unchilly Wales in UK. He's sure it'll be Baltic weather soon. All right, and we have Mr. 8 or Mr. B HHC says, hello, been using 13 for 2 weeks now. New issues far better than 12 for him. All right, so we see PK asks, anyone figured out how to load MT Power Drum Kit in Cubase 13? It shows in my other DAWs, Ableton and Reaper, but not in Cubase. So I'm not sure if that's a particular kit that works inside it, if that's a standalone instrument, or if that's just if it's a standalone instrument, or if it's a kit that loads up into other. I haven't really heard of that instrument, but if you could, anything that's a VST plugin should work. But if you could maybe specify PK. All right. Lauren asks, where did Greg receive his training to master Cubase thoroughly? I guess I'm self-taught. So I've just a lot of experience. And I've been working with it I probably just crossed over 32 years. 32 years of running Cubase. So it's kind of grown up with me. So. All right, David Griffiths says, hoping to start a college course on music production soon. They say I need to learn Logic. How different is it to Cubase? So I think that generally, I'm not familiar with Logic. I've never run it, never felt the need to. But I think that, it'll be familiar since I think a lot of the components that you see in Cubase have been kind of adopted by other programs. So we see Lauren asks, why did Studio One copy so many things from Cubase? Probably because the Steinberg team did it really well to start with. All right, so we have Mr. B HHC just saying is Mr. B from the East Coast of the UK. So thanks for joining us. All right, we have Kirk Poff checking in from Washington State, beautiful part of America. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have RK. Sorry, my chat just jumped on me. All right, so we see RK has a feature request, collapse group tracks in the mixer. So a lot of times, if we have, let's say if I have like all my background vocals in a folder here. So like I have a folder with all of my background vocals. So when we go to my mix console, I could just say, okay, I want to see only, if I hold down the shift key, I could see only those particular tracks in the folder. Or if we want to, see all tracks, so I come over here, let's look at my group channels. I can say, okay, I just hold down shift and click here. Then I can see only my groups, only my vocals, or I could just hold my mouse down and see all of my tracks just like that. So, a lot of people are like, oh, I just want to see everything that's in a folder. And then again, if you have the visibility tab, just hold down shift. And then you can say, okay, I just want to see only that particular folder. I want to see everything. I want to see only this particular folder. So, try just holding down shift. So a lot of people seem to miss that capability. And I think that will get you kind of where you want to be very easily. Okay. Okay. Right, just reading through comments. All right, so we see Sounds by Timo says, I'm selecting save only once, but in recent project window, over 100 of the same project shows up in the recent project list. So, I mean, it really sounds like, you know, because QBasis isn't automatically saving the particular files for you. So it would have to be kind of user instantiated. So maybe you have another function that's triggering a save as. Let me know if, when you look at it, if they are all exactly the same name. So, you know, or if you see like, you know, 01, 02, 03, 04, you know, if it's all the same name here, like the exact same name, that would be interesting to know. All right, Walter Till asks, hello, Greg. I have a strange behavior on solo. If I solo a track, I cannot hit solo again, and all tracks are playing. The tracks stay in mute mode. Thanks again for your help. All right, so let's take a look. Let's say we're... You touch my hand. All right, so I solo this track. And the sky turned magic. So I want to hit solo again. All the other tracks come back. And I was so say I want this drum loop. Before I knew. You know, one thing you could also try is, let's say, there's a global solo and mute defeat up at the top. Just saying, so a solo track, can I hit solo again? All tracks are playing. Now let's see if maybe if we put it into solo defeat, if you hold down like Alt or Option. So if it's still labeled as an S, now if you hold down the Alt or Option key and click, and you see like a D, that would be like our solo defeat. So now I can't. So, but that would allow me for when I solo a track for it to maintain, but it looks like it's still. So I press solo, it solos it, I press it again, and everything else is unmuted. So let me know if I'm doing something differently than you are. Okay, we're just reading through comments. All right, so we see Kumar says, I'm from FL Studio Mood recently. My question is why QBasis doesn't run in full screen mode on Windows, does it? I mean, that the tab and close minimize button is kind of awkward. So, you know, what you can do in a Windows platform, if you right click, you can hide. You know, to be multi-Windows compliant, you need to have kind of like a bar at the top, because as we open up different windows, they are now kind of all kind of Windows multi-window compliant. So that, and that's just kind of how Microsoft is kind of moving towards a lot of the programs, but and it's different on the Mac. Like, but you can right click to hide the menus. But you know, to be Windows multi-window compliant, you need to have kind of like those particular bars. All right, so we see Vishnu asking, Cubase 13 Pro user, how can we change the time base for multiple tracks at the same time? Can you kindly help? Okay, so let's come over here. Let's say I just do a new project, and we'll add number of audio tracks. Okay, so these are all now in musical mode. So if we go to our project logical editor, let's go ahead and just kind of set this up. Okay, so we want to transform, and we'll say media type is track, or we'll say our container type rather is track. And we'll go to our track operation, and then we want to time domain, and then we could toggle. So right now these tracks are in musical mode. I hit apply. All the tracks are now in linear mode, indicated by the clock. And I could switch it directly to linear and musical mode for all the tracks. We could do it for selected tracks if you wanted to do that. But just you want to, for the conditions, you want to choose transform. Container type is track. Track operation, set the time domain to toggle. And then that will just kind of do that for you, Vishnu. Great to see you on the live stream. All right, so we see from Lauren, how to map sequences of my arranger track to the pads or buttons on my MIDI keyboard using MIDI remote. Okay, that's a great question. Thanks, Lauren. Let's come over. I have, let's say, my MIDI remote. Okay, I have this kind of set up. Okay, so I go to my MIDI remote here, so I'll just switch my mapping page. And then if you go to key commands to arranger, you could say trigger arranger event 1. Trigger arranger event 2. I'll hit this button, trigger arranger track 3.
The moment I laid eyes on him, he touched my hand, and the sky turned magic blue, and I was falling.
All right, so now
Before I knew,
when I hit the keys on my MIDI remote,
all at once he kissed my face. The world was like a brand new place. Felt my fears all fly away. Don't it make
so now, and I'm going to activate the arranger track here.
it all began? The moment I laid
So
eyes
all you have
on
to do is just come over, and you just hit the button, and you could change the jump modes.
it all began. The moment I laid eyes on him, he touched my hand,
So we'll say jump mode, we'll give it
and the sky turned
1 bar.
magic blue. Falling. Feel good.
So I can hit these buttons and just trigger them.
Knowing that someone's falling. Feel good. Knowing that someone's falling. Falling. All at once he kissed my
So-
face. Feel good.
So you could do that, switching one beat by the bar, go to the end, and then just use the particular keys in your MIDI remote. And you could also do it if you don't want to set up as a MIDI remote. If you go to your studio, to studio setup, and you'll see generic remote. You could then connect your particular keys, and you can say, okay, this, you click on the learn button, say this button is going to, and we'll just come over here to, I think if you go to command, to arranger, and then you could have your different arranger events triggered directly there. So either through the generic remote or using MIDI remote. And then once it's activated, make sure that you have your jump mode set here. So if you wanted to switch at a measure, the beat, 4 bars, 2 bars, or none, you could just simply switch directly there to jump between the different patterns. All right, so you see, hi Greg, been a while since. Great to see you on. Hope all is well. I'm planning to factory restore my computer. I wonder, after reinstalling Cubase with all plugins, is there a way to regain my settings / macros? So, I think since like version 8 or 8.5, if you go to edit, come over here to the profile manager and export your profile, you could put it onto, iCloud, Dropbox, WeTransfer, something, a cloud device, or put it on a USB thumb drive, email it to yourself. So you can export it from your computer and then import it back in. So that will be all of your presets, your key commands, your macros, all those different functions like global workspaces, your ratings, stuff like that. That will all be. So just come over to edit, and go to Profile Manager, export from your old computer, take that file and import it into your new computer. All right, so we see, hi Greg, is there a way to color the tracks that are inside the tracks folder by only coloring the folder? So let's give it a shot. All right, so let's say if we want to come here, let's put these into a new folder. So I think that the folder is going to be independent. But let's activate this. Let's see, we may be able to do it with Project Logical Editor. All right, so let's say so that's going to be independent. Let's see if we can do it in Project Logical Editor. Okay, so say our container type is track. Let's go to property and say if parent object is selected. So let's see if I do this. Let's say our container type is folder track. Oh, sorry. right, so here we could let's transform. So we could do them all the same color here, but not the folder track, and then all right, so let me see if this. So I could take all the tracks within the folder, and then we could transform them to a particular color, but not the folder track, not at the same time. I could play around with this and see if I get a project logical editor set up for it. I could probably make a macro to do it. It may take a little bit of time, but I could have that maybe for Fridays. But you could colorize all within. But if you, let's select, if I wanted to come here, we could, let's see if we could select all of those. Let's see, I'll try this one last minute thing. So let's say we want to deselect. Okay. So let's see if we do this. So I just have the folder selected. We'll switch this to transform. So now I could come here and just take the folder track. So if you say transform container type equals folder track and property is set to is selected, so the folder track is selected, and then the property is set to the parent object is selected, all these particular tracks will go. So let me just switch this and see if it does it when a folder is closed. Yeah, so you could use just a quick logical editor preference like that. So whether it's open or closed, now come over here and all the tracks in the folder and a folder will be colorized at the same time. So you can give that a shot. Sorry, it took me a while to get there. Wonderful to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. I think we may have missed you on Friday, but I hope you're doing well. Thought that the Hot Mess Christmas tunes turned out really well. Thanks for all your work with that. Thanks for letting me play bass on it. right, sorry, my chat field jumped to me. All right, so I think I'm back to where I was. All right. I see Michael Teams has already started his ice cream distribution. Okay, so we see from Steve Allen says he did the update but still has problems with mixers 3 and 4 behave as expected. Mixer 2 is okay. On newer projects, only mixer 1. So I think that if you go, there might be like a little graphics workaround on the Windows if you read the release notes. But I think that there was something like you may have to physically kind of resize this. If you want to email me, Steve, at clubcubase@steinberg.de, I could send you, I can see if I can find that particular link and email it to you. But I think once you know that there are a couple graphics things that they're investigating with Microsoft with, those mentioned in the release notes. I just kind of glanced through them today. Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. Okay, Walter Till says, hi, it seems your solo behavior is normal. I experienced this solo behavior since 13. Solo seems to activate global mute. All other tracks stay muted. And then swirled by global solo off. Yeah, so, I mean, it seems like it's kind of working here as expected. Make sure you don't have any channels that are linked or, you know, or grouped together, but, you know, here it seems like it's, you know, working as expected, Walter, but let me know if yours is behaving differently. All right, so we see from Vishnu says, thank you so much, Greg. This week I've upgraded from 12 to 13 Pro, just exploring the new features. So enjoy your new version. Okay, Michael Teams asked, howdy, Greg. Is there a way to pan a track to either side without it being tied to center, i.e. guitar pan left 30 to 50 instead of left center to 50? Okay, so when we have like a stereo audio track, so let's come over here. Let's see if we are, okay, so we have a stereo track here. So when we go to our panner, so we'll just come over here to our panner, and so since it's a stereo track, we could right click here, and then you could do a combined panner. So at this point, you could, I'm just going to click, so you say, okay, this will be equally in the left and right channel. But now if I hold the mouse down and move the cursor up, at this point, we could just have the panning kind of set just accordingly like that for your stereo track. And if you go up, we could reverse the channels when it turns orange. So at that point, you could automate the panning. So you could have it very kind of focused panning left to right channels. Or if you wanted more dispersed, you could try that. Now let's switch it to, let's add a mono track. I think that behavior is going to change with the mono track. So the mono track, we can just, it's going to be kind of from the center because there's no other channel to kind of work with. So, you know, maybe you could just take that particular track, that mono track, and we can see if you're in 13, you could just click right here, convert that to a stereo track. And now we could say, let's go to the balanced panner for this. And then as you go to your balanced panner, you could or combined panner rather, sorry. So So we'll say our combined panner, and then you could adjust kind of the panning as you describe. Okay, so we have a question from Vishnu. Hi Greg, which pan law do you recommend? Equal power or -3? So it's really, it could be kind of a personal thing. You know, I usually leave the defaults. I usually do -3 personally. You know, some people would manipulate kind of the pan law. If you're not familiar with pan law, you could come over here and we'll go to your project setup, which you can access by hitting Shift S, and then you could have different pan law settings. So people, when this was first introduced in Nuendo, a lot of people would manipulate the pan law so that as we kind of went farther out in the panning spectrum, that it would actually, you know, the elements that were panned hard left and hard right could be a little louder than other pan law settings. So usually people would do -3 if you're want to mimic like an SSL console. You could do -4.5 dB. I think that's the pan law setting that kind of the classic SSL E and G series, the 4Ks would utilize. So, but usually I leave mine set at -3. But you know, you could experiment in different songs. You may want to, you know, adjust the pan law to suit the particular song. All right, Walter Till asks, is it possible to have 2 actions via MIDI remote on one command, like turning the volume down is also turning a high shelf filter? Thanks. So generally, just for clarity, it'll be kind of one command per function, because that could get you into all sorts of problems inadvertently later. So it's going to be designed for one command per button. But, you know, if you wanted to do 2 things at once, you could, you know, depending on the scenario, you could probably, you know, you could, if it's a project logical editor or if it's a macro, you could have a macro that could have, you know, 2 or 3 different scenarios, plus a project logical editor within a macro within a project logical editor, and trigger a macro from within one particular key command if you wanted to. So that way one function could trigger a macro, or a project logical editor could do multiple things at once. So that could be an approach. But, you know, there could be times when you're turning the volume down that you want the shelf to go the opposite way. Excuse me. All right. All right, wonderful to see Tiago checking in from Brazil. Thanks as always for being online. Great to see you. All right, fantastic to see Gareth on. Great job on the Hot Mess Christmas songs, Gareth. Okay. See, Michael Teams just says Greg is PLEing again, Project Logical Editing. So, all right, you see Gareth just says QBasis is faster than Logic on Mac. It's official. So yeah, I saw the one video about how most of the programs don't use any of the efficiency cores, so it's kind of shocking. Right. All right, so you see that Michael Teams has granted my family, myself, 1 gallon of Christmas cookie ice cream. So sounds great. It says thanks for everything you do. All right, so so I just see comment, coloring is messed up in 13. So I'm not sure if it's changed that much. So one of the things that has changed in 13 is if you want to change the colors here, you can hold down the Alter Option key to open up the window. You could also just hold down the Alter Option key and use the mouse scroll wheel to navigate between colors. But other than that, the colors have really kind of maintained and stayed the same. So let me know if there's something in particular that's messed up with the colors, but I think it's really, pretty similar. See, Gareth has kind words, says my bass made the song, so I only get to play bass on cool songs. So. See, Michael Team says, we appreciate the great bass work on the Hot Mess Christmas tunes, and congrats on the orchestral work, too. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. Did my first orchestra gig on Sunday, so it was a lot of fun. All right, so we see a question, and thank you for the kind words, Michael. Says, can you apply volume automation to a selection region without playing? Okay, so let me just... So a couple of ways to do automation without playing is, let's say we'll come over here, activate this project. So if you open up the automation lane, you could draw in automation with the pencil tool. You could also take existing automation here and raise it up or lower it down. We could choose to tilt the automation. I'll just make this a little larger so it's easier to see. Once we have that automation set up, I can move the automation. If I wanted to switch to my selection tool, we can now tilt and do Bezier curves with the automation. So you could do all sorts of great stuff with automation. If I wanted to select like this automation range and compress or expand or increase, decrease, tilt from the left or tilt from the right. So you could do lots of automation without playing. Usually kind of helps to hear it. All right, John Costigan, in his comment was, please help keep the live stream alive. Hit the like button. Thanks. All right, always wonderful to see Sable Winters on. We have David M. checking in from Liverpool. All right, so VariAudio asks, in QBase 13, they changed the project logical editor that when a parent object is selected, it won't change tracks in the subfolder, correct? Like I try to route every track within the subfolder of a main one. So I don't think that has changed. So let's come over, let's go back to, I think it was this project. So let's say I want to take, we'll activate this project. Let's create an output here. So let's say I want this to go to stereo out 2. Okay, so I want to take everything within this particular folder and route it to not the main stereo out, but to stereo out 2. So I'm going to select the folder here. Let's get to our project logical editor. Okay, so we're going to say transform. We're going to say we're going to take our folder track. I think we could just even just change this. Go to track operation, connect output. Let's make it to stereo out 2. Okay, so I have this selected, and now when I hit OK, all right, just so now when I come here, if that is selected, I could take everything in that folder and route it to stereo out 2. So let's say I want this to go to my 5.1 output. So I want everything in this folder to be routed to the 5.1 out. So if we go up, we'll see that each of the tracks are routed out to stereo out 2. I select a folder, hit apply. Now all the tracks in the folder are now all routed to my 5.1 output. So again, transform, container type is folder track. And then this is the thing that messes up a lot of people. You want to set the Boolean condition here to, you want to say the track is selected or the property is set to the parent object is selected. So once that is done, anything in this particular folder will now be carried over. So let's make this all go back to our stereo out and hit apply. And once I have the folder selected, then everything is now going out of the stereo out. So let me know if that makes sense for you, VariAudio. All right, so we have SR Cummings says, first time I had a chance to enjoy a Club Cubase live in a while. Always informative and fun. Blessings, Greg. So we're glad you can make it live, and thanks for saying hi. Make sure you hit the like button if you've learned anything interesting or new that you found helpful. Okay. All right, my chat field just jumped. Okay, so you see from VariAudio, right, so he says, let's say I have a brass folder and separate subfolders like trumpet, horns, etc., and I want to route all the tracks in each subfolder to the brass output in QBase 12. That was possible, but now it won't work. So let's take a look. So if we have subfolders within folders, okay, so I'll come here. Let's put these into a subfolder. Okay. All right, so we have two subfolders. All these tracks are currently going out of stereo out. Okay. Okay, so let's try that same function again. So let's come to our project logical editor. And let's set it to our 5.1 out. Hit apply. All right, so let's try setting this up. I haven't tried this in 12, but we may go to all right, let me see. We may have to open those up first. Okay, let me just check my preference here. All right, so let's say I'll just all right, let me just select. Okay, so I'm going to save this as a preset. Okay, so we're going to call this deep track fold. All right, so let's go to our process project. Okay, so let's say if we come here, so I'm basically running the project logical editor twice. So let's see if that will do it. And I'm just going to select everything. All right, so let me go to transform. So let's say if I have this set, I'm just going to hit it twice, 3 times. and we'll check to see if everything now is set to the 5.1 out. So let's say so put it back to our stereo out. So if you, let's see if we just, I'll set this to our 5.1 out. So I have this. So again, our folders, each of these are set to stereo out. So I'm going to come here. Let's just so if I have this set up twice, and I could probably come up with a more elegant solution, but now all these tracks within the subfolder are now routed. So if I just trigger this one a couple times, then all the different tracks are then routed subfolders within a folder. But if you have the like the project logical editor that you had in version 12 and want to send me the preset, I'd be happy to take a look at it. You can send it to me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, but it looks like you can do it. You may have to run the same command a couple times. Okay, so we have from Mickey's Productions. How do you replace a drum sound? Let's say I have it on a timeline. Also, how you normalize and how you do automation easy. Thanks. Okay, so if we have a drum sound on our tracks, let's say, okay, just come over here. Let's find a kick sample. Just okay, so if you have a kick drum that's on your timeline, so let's say come here. All right, so let's say we're going to do kind of a 4 and a floor kind of vibe here. All right, so if I have this and I wanted to automatically replace it with other samples on my timeline, if I just drag the sample and hold down the shift key, it says, do you want to replace all the events? And then just dragging it while holding down the shift key, anytime that is put into timeline, you could then replace anytime that particular sample is used. So drag and hold down the shift key. So that's how you could do that pretty easily. All right, let's see, I'll say, how do you normalize? So if you have your audio recording in here, all you'd have to do is go to your audio, to processes, and just choose normalize. And then you could set how much you want to normalize by peak, so let's say -12, or if you want to do it in loudness units. So you could do it either or. So again, just come over and select the event, go to audio, to processes, and you can go to normalize right there. All right, and how do you do automation easy? All right, so if you just come here, you click on W to write the automation. If I want to view the automation, I could click directly below. And if I just grab my fader here, so we're going to click on W, I hit play, move the cursor any number of ways, or move the fader, use a control surface. And then when you're done writing the automation, you could just click on R to read the automation. If you don't want the automation read, you could bypass it, or if you want the automation to be followed, click on it with the R button. And if you want to just draw automation in, you could just draw in. And as we showed before, we could say, okay, I want to take this part of the automation and let's increase the gain there. Or if you wanted to do different curves and stuff like that. See, Sable Winters has been granted 1 gallon of Texas strawberry ice cream. Make Sable feel at home. All right, so we see, hi Greg, how can velocity values be used to influence the filter cutoff on HALion Sonic using the input transformer? So it could really depend on the instrument within HALion Sonic. So if it's doing a rompler, you may not, it's playing back a Rode sample, you may not be able to do that, but depending on the instrument itself, so let's say we'll just go to HALion Sonic and let's open up, so if you have like the full HALion, a lot of it will be kind of playing back different sounds, but let's say, I think one of them, if we go to Flux, you could have kind of like more of, and, depending on, like your modulation matrix here of what you want to do. So if you wanted the modifier to be, velocity, or different functions here, you could say, okay, like your source, maybe, so within the modulation matrix is where you could set that up. So it's not really going to be, I don't think it's going to be so contingent on the particular input transformer, but more based on kind of like the modulation matrix that's going to be set up within, or the synthesis within the particular instrument that you're using. All right. All right, so we see from Peter asked, coming back to math, can you do a conditional, like if the snare goes over a certain level, the guitar pans to the left? So nothing like that's going to be, I'm trying to think if there's a way to do that practically. So, there may be, you might be able to do it with, let's say if let's take a guitar sample, you might be able to do it with so let's say we'll take our kick drum here and let's just find a guitar loop. Okay, so let's take. All right, so if we want to come to this track, let's go to an insert and let's put on the FX modulator. And let's set this to pan. All right, so let's say. All right, and I'm going to make this this a stereo track. All right, and if we come over here, let's go to our trigger section. Let's activate the sidechain. So I want this to come from our Tech House kick. Okay, so now if we want it to come, and we can set the amount of the sidechain input. So let's let's say if we want it to be panned, let me just reset. So let's set this to quarter notes or input, but we could now just so here we could probably set just the so there you could set kind of the side chain for the guitar, so the guitar can pan to the left based upon the side chain input of a different channel. So but I think if we play around, so you could set different thresholds. So you could probably experiment with the FX modulator to do 6 independent side chains. So you could probably set up a condition like that pretty easily to do. All right. All right, so we see just a comment from Alan Bijou says, no, I meant like what I want if I want to pan something to do something within the panner without drawing in automation line. So, you know, if you, let's say I want to take this kick and let's pan the kick without drawing in the automation line. All you have to do is, I'll just come here, let's click on W, and then you could pan the automation without drawing in a line, and it may have a preference here. I'll just turn this off for reveal parameter on rate. So let's say I am here and I don't have any of the automation lanes open. So that way you could do the pan automation without having any automation lanes open. So let me know if that works for you. All right, so we see, and Alan Bijou, just further clarification, like selecting a region of a guitar, for example. Load in front, maybe rhythm to surrounds if they're in the same track. All right, so when we come over, so if we had this going out to, let's say, our 5.1 output, we could see that now when we go to our panner, that, and I don't have this being routed out, but we could say, okay, I want this more in the center, and then, you know, just like we were panning before, so once it's being routed to a 5.1 out, you could just click on W, and we could move and adjust your panning on your tracks. So now everything I just did for my 5.1 panning is there without having to write particular automation. I don't have, you're not going to hear because I don't have anything kind of monitored for the 5.1 out. But that's all you'd have to do to take your guitar solo from your center speaker and then pan it back just like that. So you don't have to open up your automation lanes for that. All right, so we see from Manuela77, with MIDI remote, I want to create shortcuts on my keyboard to navigate between different markers. Okay, so let's come over here. Let's add some markers. I'll add, let's say, a marker track. All right. I'll just go ahead and name some of them here. So now, if you're not familiar in QBase 13, you could just hold down the Shift key and name markers. So if we want to navigate between different markers here, we could just choose to come over. So let's say, so we have, let's say, 4 markers. We could say, okay, I want this. Let's go to marker. So I want the top buttons. I have that. So I'm going to choose this button here. So let's choose marker. So I want to all right, so we'll say, I think we could just use the, is it next event? So if the marker track is selected, Okay, so I'll say this, I'm going to go to next event, and here we'll go to previous event. Okay, so now if I'm on my marker track, I can say, okay, let's say if I'm, so I could go to the previous event or to the next event using my MIDI remote. But let's say I want to go like from 1 to 3 to 4, you know, or in whatever order. So I'm going to come over here. Let's go to our markers. We'll get key commands to markers. Or it might be under navigate. Let's say to marker 1. Okay, so I'll say marker 1. I'll hit this button. All right, and we'll say marker 3. All right, so now when I want to go to marker 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So we could just navigate like so, or go to we just put in markers 2 and 3. So now I could go to my markers just like this, or if I want to go to the next, I could go to the next event or previous event using the MIDI remote. So you can navigate markers pretty easily using the MIDI remote. Let me know if that makes sense. All right, sorry, my chat field just jumped. Okay. All right, so we have Jürgen Messel just saying hello from Denmark. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see VariAudio says, can you try routing with the subfolders, like another folder inside a folder and have the main folder selected, but route the tracks inside subfolders? So I think I'll play around with it a little bit. Maybe I'll have it dialed in for Friday's live stream. But please send me an email reminder to clubcubase@steinberg.de. But I think we could get it going. I'll play around with it some more. All right, so we have QBase user just checking in from Northern Canada. Thanks for joining us. All right, Randy Lee says, still think QBase 13 looks great. Okay, so Manuela77 asks, how do you use the root key in the MediaBay? Okay, so let's just do a new project here. Okay, so I'm going to set my project root key to D. Okay, so I'm going to, so let's say I'll just do a quick drum loop. Okay. Okay, so let's say I have find something maybe. Okay, so now when I have my project root key, so like when we look at this synth part, so let's say we look at this particular synth part, it will probably have the project root key information on it. So let's say when I come here and I'm playing this, so if I change my root key now to E, anything that has kind of like the metadata for root key will now just automatically kind of play in that particular key. So I'll come over here. So let's say I want to find maybe like a synth. So now when I drop an audio file in, so now that the project root key is kind of set, so let's say we'll have some weird tonalities here. But if I switch this to the key of G now for my project root key, all the audio will now modulate. It's going to be in the key of C. My drums won't change because they don't have a project root key, but any loop that has kind of harmonic musical material that has kind of a tonal center or tonality to it will then kind of automatically transpose to fit into the project root key. Alright, so we see from Walter Till, hi again, unsoloing a track keeps my stereo out on solo. I do not know what I've done. All right, so even here, let's look at my mix console. So, when we solo, so we see that, everything is just soloing right there. So let me know if it's every project that you're running into or if it's just one particular project. And let's see if this is going to, if I have this going to a group track. So I'll do a group track to the selected channel and I'll do an effects channel to the selected channel. And when we do solo of the tracks that are also feeding groups and sends, that those will be soloed as well. So we could just come over here. So when I do this, the groups and the sends will solo to match, and the stereo output to kind of show the full signal path. But if the track is going straight to the stereo output, then so make sure that also if you have any routings going to like shared groups, shared effects, those might be soloed as well depending upon your routing so that you could hear the source. David M says, hi Greg, would you recommend uninstalling Cubase 13 before updating or just let Download Assistant do it? So it's kind of designed where the Download Assistant could just do it and and will overwrite the data so you don't have to uninstall first. All right, so we have a question from Cubase user. So we see, hi Greg, can you please demonstrate how to delay tracks in time? Let's say there's a bunch of plugins and 4 vocal tracks, and there's the beat in time on the top, how to align them with the beat. Okay, so let's say we have right? So let's say we have a beat going on here. Say a bad beat, but right. So if you wanted to do like a delay, okay, so if I want to put a delay like on this particular, I'll just move it here and we'll make a copy of that. So say, and I want this delay to be in time. All you have to do is I'm going to add, let's say, an effects channel track. You could add it as an insert if you want. And I'll just put this as a stereo delay. Okay, and you know, you have this little button that says sync on the time, so you can switch between a musical rhythmic value or in milliseconds. So let's say I want like a quarter note delay here and a quarter note delay on the right channel. So once we turn in sync, I'll just say, I want more than good, 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 good. I want more than good, 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 good. I want more than good, 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 good. I want more than good, 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 good. I want more than good, 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 good. I want more than good, 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 good. So if I turn on my click track, good, 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 good. I want more than good, 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 good. So I could also say I want this to be like an eighth note delay. I want more than good, good, good. Now if I have tempo changes here, so let's say I add a tempo track and I want my tempo to speed up slightly, let's say right here at the repeat, my delay time will speed up and it'll still stay synced to eighth notes. I want more than good, 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 good. I want more than good, 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 good. I want more than good, 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 good. I want more than good, 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 good. I want more than good, 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 good. I want more than good, 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 good. I want more than. So that's how you could time delays. So, you know, when I was like a second assistant engineer at a big studio in New York, you know, I would have to figure out what the delay time was, and you divide the tempo by 60,000, and you would write on a piece of paper the delay times for quarter note, dotted quarter note, eighth note, you know, half note, etc. And that way the engineer could just dial in the correct delay time. So let me know if that's what you want to see, QBasis user. Alleyway 321 says it's fun to watch the wizardry in action. So I just push buttons and move a mouse and talk. Okay, so Ray AR asks, why are the dividing lines erased in Beat Designer when you delete notes? All right, so let's just go ahead and open up instrument here. So let's get to Groove Agent SE. I'll just load a kit. Okay, so let's go ahead and right, so come over here to my MIDI inserts. All right, so let's say we'll just Okay. All right. So why are the dividing lines erased in Beat Designer when you delete notes? All right. So let's say if I delete the note, so it still seems like they are. So say I put on one sound there. So I'm not seeing any, I assume that these are the dividing lines between the different lanes, or we see the grid musically spaced out here. So I'm not seeing anything disappear after deleting notes. So say I just want to delete notes, all the grids are there. So let me know if it's horizontal or vertical lines that you see disappearing, but mine seem to be working as expected. All right, so we see attracted to the metal like Magneto, just saying, hey, from England, thanks for joining us today. All right, so we have a question. How do you select certain notes depending on velocity or position in the measure? Okay. Then I see I don't understand the logical editor. All right, so we'll show you the logical editor. We could think of the logical editor as kind of being a conditional editor. So I'm just going to go ahead and just add some notes here. Okay, so let's say I want to put in some D1s. We'll put in some kicks on C1. Okay, and we'll just. Okay, so now let's use the logical editor. So the logical editor, what it's going to do, there's a Midi logical editor which will probably do this. So one, you want to select the Midi event. First, what do we want to do? Do we want to change something? Do we want to select something? Okay, so it sounds like in this condition, we want to select certain notes depending on velocity. All right, so let's say I have velocity changes here on my hi-hats. Okay, so on my hi-hats, let's say I want to select notes that have velocity between 40 and 100. So we're going to choose to select, and we want to select Midi notes. And what condition do we want to set on the Midi notes? We can say we want to select the velocity, and in previous versions this may be value 1. And we're going to say the velocity is not equal to 0. We want our velocity within a particular range. So we're going to say our velocity is going to be inside the range of 40 to 100. So now I'm going to hit apply, and every note that's between 40 and 100 has been selected for the velocity. So again, we selected Midi notes with the velocity inside the range of 40 to 100. Now let's say I want to select notes that are at a specific position within a measure. So I'm going to remove my velocity condition. I could maintain that if I wanted to, but we're going to select notes that, and we'll choose our position, and this is where it falls in time. And we could say that's going to be, we'll choose beyond cursor. No, we want to choose inside bar range. And now we'll get this little diagram. So I can say I want notes that fall roughly on beat 2. So now every note that falls around beat 2, when I hit apply, will be selected. Now if I wanted to do beats 2 and 4, at this point I would insert, and then we would set a secondary condition. So we could say let's go to our position is going to be inside bar range. And I want this to be roughly, so we see our downbeat, beat 2, beat 3, beat 4. And I want to adjust around beat 4. So I don't want it to be notes that are on beat 2 and beat 4 only. I want it to be on beat 2 or on beat 4. So I'm going to set my Boolean condition here. So now we're going to select MIDI notes that are on beats 2 and 4. So we look at our example here. I hit apply. Now let's add our velocity condition. So you can say I want to now, I'll just remove that. Let's go to the bottom here. So I'm going to select this, and we're going to say the velocity is inside the range of 40 to 100. So what we want to do is we're going to select every note on beat 2 or beat 4, and the velocity is between 40 and 100. So we'll come here, and those are the notes that meet that criteria. Now we could also choose to do stuff like transform. So what do I want to do to these notes? Maybe I want to take the pitch and I want to subtract the pitch by 12. So I could take any of those notes, and we'll make this larger here so you can see it. Any of these particular notes so now we're going to transform notes that are on beats 2 or 4 and have a velocity between 40 and 100, and I'm going to drop them down 1 octave. So now all those notes will be dropped down 1 octave. So that kind of gives you an idea. You set up a condition. So I need to do this, this, and this. So, we can think of, it's kind of classic computer programming. I'm not a developer. But if this, then that. So if it's a MIDI note that is on beats 2 and 4 that has a velocity between 40 and 100, I want to delete it. I want to select it. I want to transpose it. Those types of conditions you could set up with the MIDI logical editor. And, a lot of times when you're starting off, just open up an example. You're not going to break anything. You could always undo it, but open up some of the examples that are provided, and then kind of you could backward engineer, and you'll start to see the logic in it. So let me know if that works for you, Alexandrina. All right. All right, so Thorsten K asks, hello there, I'd like to know if there's an easy way to copy more than one VST settings from one to another project. Okay. All right, so let's do just kind of a new project here. All right, hang on a second. I'll just... All right, we'll just close out some of the windows here. Okay. All right. Okay, so moving settings from more than one VST to another project. So if we have, let's say we have our project set up here. So I'm not sure if it's virtual instrument or if it is a or like track. So we'll do a bit of both. So let's say we have a preset here. So let's go to like a track preset. Okay, so here we have plugins on this track. So, all right, so we have plugins here. Let's go ahead and add in 2 instrument tracks. All right, let's add one more instrument track. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and we'll save this as call it December 12th, 2023. Okay, so we have this project saved. So let's do a new project. So I'm gonna come over here. Let's do new project. All right, so let's say I'm in an existing project. Let's say I have a couple audio tracks going on. So I want to import like those settings, those VST instruments from the other project. So here we would go to our file menu to import tracks from project. So I want to come over here. We'll go to projects. Let's go to Hangouts. And we'll see December 12th. All right, so now I could say, okay, do I want to import the tempo signature? I'll say, I want those 2 audio tracks and those 2 instrument tracks. Do I want the events or parts or not? I could import them into just a specific range. So now when I hit OK, those 4 tracks have now been added, and we go to Pad Shop, we open it up, and we go to my retro log. Those particular sounds on instruments are automatically saved. When we go to our plugins on our tracks, we can see that the track presets that we dragged over are automatically carried over as well. So let me know if that is helpful for you, Thorsten. All right, wonderful to see Mark Rabin from Montana on. So, and he's with his dog Stella. So everyone say woof to Stella. Stella's a very loyal attendee. All right. All right, John Barry asks, hi Greg, question. Some types of tracks I have the option of standard or combined panner, but others are fixed on standard. Some effects tracks have both and others don't. What determines this, please? So if we have it depends, I think, if it's a mono or a stereo track. So let's say we switch this to a mono track here, this audio. When we go to the panner, we don't really we have just kind of the panning options because we're only dealing with one particular channel. But when we go to a stereo track, here's where we could see our combined panner. So now, since we have 2 different sources, we could balance those 2 different sources. So, but when we come here to our, we right click on the pan. Since we're only dealing with one channel, we pan that one channel. But if you're dealing with stereo or like a 5.1 or kind of more immersive, you could right click and get the different stereo combined panner. So I think it just matters if you're on a stereo or mono source, John. All right, so we see, by the way, when do you have a plug-in crash protection system? So I think that currently, like, we could do the sandboxing on the Windows platform, but it's not available on Mac OS. I haven't talked to development team in a while about that, but the last time I had kind of brought it up is it wasn't necessarily available on Mac OS, and they don't want to necessarily have different functionality between the two platforms. All right, so we see JB asks, if you make edits to audio files stored on your PC through MediaBay, do those edits change the original file? So, you know, if we're doing like sample editing, so we could often think of if we're in MediaBay and, you know, so let's go to open up MediaBay here, and we want to find a, I'll just come over, let's get to, all right, so if I'm here and I choose to do, you know, a lot of times when we do an edit in MediaBay, you know, like there's not, you know, if we do a particular edit, I mean, the metadata here, if we add metadata tags, these will be automatically kind of embedded into the file. But most of the time when we do like sample editing, that's actually going to be, so I think if we, you know, I mean, there's not much editing that goes on here. Once it's in the project, then depending on the edit, if you did a direct offline process, then the original files are maintained by default. But if you do like, you know, like typical sample editing, those files can, you know, can be overwritten if you wanted to. All right, so we see from Cristiano Productions or Cristiano Prod. How can I set a shortcut to toggle the loop mode on an event when using the range selection tool? Okay, so let's come over here. I'll just drag a quick event in just so you can see this. Okay, so there is a preference where we could say that the, like when I make a range selection, that this particular that the left and right locators will match. So, and this is just a preference. It's found under editing. We can say cycle follows range selection. So once that is turned on, now when I make a range selection, the cycle markers follow. So to set that as a keyboard shortcut, we could now just come over here. Let's go to cycle follows range, and you could just simply, when you want to do that, you could assign a keyboard shortcut to that particular function. If we wanted to also, you know, assign that to our MIDI remote, so let's say, okay, when I hit this button here, I want to, so we would go to key commands, to preferences, and then we would see under editing, cycle follows range selection tool. So now if I want to activate that, I could trigger it from a keyboard shortcut, or when so now it's on, I hit the button on my MIDI remote, I can see that this has changed, and now it doesn't take effect. When I want it enabled, I could just hit the MIDI remote to turn that function on or off. And you'll get this little pop-up so you could see what the state is as you change it. So let me know if that helps. All right, so Mark Rabin finished a new song last night. Congratulations. And he remixed it today with fresh ears. It's like so amazing how your brain works. So. Okay, so we see Thorsten K, maybe this different. So it says copy insert plugin settings to another project. All right, so let's take a look. So let's say I have these plugin settings. Hang on 1 second. All right, I'm back. All right, so we could try another method. So let's say if we come over here to these plugins, let's go to this track. Then I think if we copy, so I think if we come over here, we could select this track and paste. Okay, but let's go to a new project. And you could paste it into another project as well. So again, just kind of in the upper left-hand corner of like your inserts, you could just copy, right-click, copy, and then paste it over. All right, so we see Alan Bijou says continue from top. I meant at the same time without playing. Okay, so I think this might have been with the panning, if my memory serves me right. So let's say I add an audio track, and I want to just go to my 5.1 out. I'll just drag an event over. Okay, so this is now going out of our 5.1 out. So let's say while we're playing, so I will just, let's say we want to write the automation. All right, so here you might have to, when doing a pan automation, because this is actually doing multiple different things, so I'll just touch, and let's say I'm here and I want this to be panned, so I'll hit play, and you might have to play to do like surround panning and some of the automation, because that could actually do multiple pan sources. So let's just say I want to go, let's just show used. So let's say right here. So I guess once you have it set up once, you might have to play, but you might have to just come over here, and you could, select this particular automation range. So I'll just take my snap on and off. So let's say I want that automation range, copy, and then I could say, okay, during the verse, I want it to to select this automation range and paste. So you could do stuff like that as well without playing it, but you may have to initially write it in. So could be a little more involved with surround stuff. All right, my chat field just jumped on me. Okay, so I think I'm in the right area. So we see Jesus Lamelli. Now that we have a trial version for 13, I see that we have options for QBass 13 Pro and Elements. Can we download both, or do we have one trial period? So I think you could do them both independently, but I haven't tried it myself. I don't know if there's any changes that happen with QBass 13, but I'm inclined to say that they are independent of each other. Okay. All right, Neil Conway sending best wishes from Oregon on celebrating a rare sunny day. Thanks for joining us, Neil. Gareth is saying I'm having a party at my house. So. All right, we see QBass X is like number 107, says thanks so much for these streams, Greg. So you're welcome. Thanks for being on. All right, so Keith Young says, Greg, you missed my question. Should I repeat it? Yeah, sorry if I missed it. But yeah, please feel free to repeat it. Sorry about that. Try not to miss any. All right, so QBass user asks, how to sync a track delayed because of use of plugins that have delay compensation shown that there's 55 milliseconds delay. Should we use the grid to milliseconds or beats or bar when delaying it from the inspector? Thanks. So, you know, even though you see plugins that may indicate, so let's say if I come here to my inserts and we throw on like a multi-band compressor, we can see that the plugin delay compensation is there. When you're playing back tracks, you don't have to do anything. QBass automatically does the delay compensation for you. So, you know, some other programs have finally caught up, but for years, a lot of times, you know, when you threw plugins on your DAW, all the tracks would be slightly out of time, but QBass does the automatic delay compensation for you, so you don't have to worry about that. All right, so we have Kai Wen Franklin checking in from Florida, I believe, if memory serves. All right, so we see from Kai Wen Franklin just says, will we ever get some type of upgraded groove agent? It's nice, but it's a pain to work with compared to some other drum tools and VSTs. But, you know, I'm sure that they're always planning on new stuff, but realize that, you know, groove agent is a lot more flexible in that, you know, most drum VSTs I see are either kind of like a beatbox kind of MPC style paradigm, or they're a virtual drummer. So I think when you combine both of them and have, like, even with the full groove agent, like the virtual percussion agent, that when you have, you know, more capabilities, that it is, you know, it's going to be more complex. just kind of by the nature and the fact that you could blend those two different kind of radically different workflows within the same tool. So, but if you have like particular things that you want to do in Groove Agent that you can't find, just let me know. Or there's something that you have difficulty accomplishing. All right, so we see how I think there's a question in French. Maybe it says comment on MIDI CC automation for portamento. All right, so let's add a instrument track here. All right, so let's go to, I think it's CC65 if memory serves. All right, so we would just say I think we go to our MIDI CCs. All right, so we'll say, let's go to set up available controllers. All right, so these are the ones that are hidden. So we can say, let's go to portamento on off. Let's add them. So again, click on the little triangle, set up available controllers, and then you could come right over here. You'll see CC65 portamento, and then you could just have access to it directly there. So the little drop down triangle, set up available controllers. It's probably going to be on the hidden side. So select it, add it to the list on the left, and then it will appear in your CC list. All right, so we had a question. What is VST Live? So VST Live is kind of a live performance solution software. So what it's intended to do is, you know, obviously we have QBase for doing your composition, and most people would use that for composing, you know, writing songs, mixing, editing. But when people go out live, they may need to have different setups for, okay, like, you know, as a song plays, I want these virtual instruments and hardware keyboards to switch sounds every time we get to the chorus. I want to be able to change this at when I go to the verse. I want all the keyboards in my guitar amp simulators to do this. I need to control my MIDI lighting. I need to see the lyrics pop up on my iPad. I need to see the chords pop up. So for doing a live production, you know, which is a very complicated thing these days with all your backing tracks, lights, you know, having your Q mixes, all that can be done in VST Live. So instead of, you know, transforming QBase from what it is into more of a live performance tool, that's what VST Live is intended for. All right, so we have JVI just saying, greetings from the Netherlands. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we see question, is it preferable to use multiple instances of Omnisphere, HALion, etc., or a single instance with 16 MIDI channels? And how does multi-threading help lighten the CPU load in such cases? So I'm not sure, I haven't checked in Omnisphere in a long time, but a lot of instruments don't utilize multi-cores CPUs. So when we go to add, let's say, a HALion or HALion Sonic, we can come over, and if you go to options, we have multi-core loading. So we could just simply come over here and set how many processing cores you want the instrument to use. So one mistake that a lot of people do is, especially a lot of instruments don't support multi-core functionality. So what you need to do, in that case, you'd be better off running one sound per instance, because that would automatically split the CPU usage across multiple cores. Whereas if your program, if the instrument didn't support multi-core and you loaded up 16 instruments in a single instance, at that point it's only going to utilize one CPU core unless it's set up kind of like HALion is to utilize multi-cores. So check to see if Omnisphere can do that. But generally, as a rule of thumb, a lot of people will use one sound per instance for kind of spreading the load across multiple cores of your CPU. All right. All right, so you see John Barry, just that the mono stereo things cleared up the panner. Okay, so we see from Diamond District Studios, dragging stereo audio files into project window, I get 2 split mono files. How can I default to joint stereo clip without converting? Mac OS, QBase 12, Nuendo 13 Pro. All right, so to do this, I think it's just a preference. So let's go to your preferences. And I think we go to event, to editing, to audio. There's a split channels function here. So let's say, so editing audio, so try unchecking split channels. So if I have split channels and I drag a stereo file in, I'll just select a different one here. Okay, so when I drag this into my project, it's now split. When I have that preference disabled, so again, editing to audio, uncheck split channels, and now drag this over, it'll now be a stereo channel. Okay, so we see how to use the chord track with our own MIDI files. Okay, so if you want to make a chord track, what you could do is, let's see if I let's find a project here real quick. So to make a chord track, so let's say we have like piano part here. So what I could do is I'm going to select the track or the event. I will come over to my project menu to chord track, and then we can create chord events. And now our chord track has automatically been populated directly from the MIDI part. Now, so that's how you could get chords from that. Now, if once you have the chords, you could tell the piano here to follow the chord track. So let's go to chords, and you could say, okay, I want to follow chords. So we could say, okay, we could analyze chords if you need it, or so we could just come over here. So now as I change chords here, so let's say I go from a G sus4 chord to an F chord, that we would see the MIDI notes kind of automatically change. So we could, you know, if the MIDI track is set to follow chords, when you make a change here, that will change the particular MIDI events as well. If you want to make the chord track from the MIDI, you can select it, you can drag it directly to the chord track if you wanted to, or go to project, chord track, and say create chord events like that. Okay, Okay, so we see from Chaser ask, hello, is there a way when you export for the audio appears under the channel you're exporting, not at the bottom of the session? Okay, so let's say if I come here, so I think it's going to add it to the bottom. Let's take a look. There may be a change. So let's come to our export audio mixdown. I think that this will, I think it's still going to put it at the bottom, but when you import files, then you can, when you import tracks from the project, it will automatically, you could put it below the selected track, but not on the export. So I think, people don't necessarily want to have, the exported audio. If it is a virtual instrument, and you choose to freeze the instrument, that would go directly underneath. So say we go to render in place, then at that point it would automatically go directly underneath the particular event, and you could have the other event muted. But when you export audio, it's going to actually create a new track, and it's not going to put it below the selected track. But new in 13, when you go to import tracks from project, you do have the option of put it at the bottom of the track list or below the selected track. But I can pass that along as kind of a feature request. All right, so we see question, how can you save samples from Groove Agent in your project file for collaboration or archiving? I can easily do it in Ableton by using collect all and save, but I can't find how to do it in Cubase. So if we have built up sounds, all right, so let's jump back here, and I want all right, so I'm just going to add a couple of audio tracks here. Okay, so I'm just going to call these kick, snare, hat, overhead, left. We'll just say tom 1, tom 2, overhead left, overhead right. All right, so let's say now I'm just going to record quickly just to get some audio files. Okay, so I'm going to load up, so we have some, we'll call these our samples. I'm going to, at this point, let's load up our instruments, make a Groove Agent SE. I'm going to drag these particular files. All right, so this is, let's say, our drum kit. So all you have to do is right click on the agent, say export kit with samples. Where do we want to put it to? So let's come over here. Let's go to our December 12th, 2021. I'll make a new folder. We'll call it GA samples. And we'll call it December 12th. And then where it says export samples, so let me just come right over here. Make sure I have the right kit. Okay. Okay, so hit OK, and then that's going to be just stored within your project. So if I did it right, we'll come over. And here's our December 12th Groove Agent kit, just right there. So, and we can see our samples just all created right there with the preset. So again, just right click, export kit with samples, and then you could just choose the folder directly there. That's all you have to do. All right, so we see how to use markers in QBasis 3. So I don't have my iPad or my phone handy, and I'm not able to really show it. But I'm sure that you could probably just drop the markers in with your finger as well. But sorry, I don't have a real way, Esmeralda, of showing it because I'm doing a live stream from my computer. All right, so I see question, removing E-licenser, I lose studio strings and Eagle piano. What am I doing? Sorry for repeating. Thanks again. So no, I'm sorry, I missed your question, Keith. All right, so probably what it is, you go to your Steinberg download assistant. You want to make sure, because if it sounds like you maybe update it from, HALion Sonic or HALion. So if you had those on previous versions, those were E-licenser based. But you need to come over to make sure that you've done the new downloads. So let's say we come over here to your VST instruments and plugins. We'll find HALion. So let's find your HALion 7. So if you have HALion 7, which it sounds like, just come over here and make sure that you download the content from here. And you need to have that HALion 7 download. So it's, the older downloads would need to actually, would require the USB E-licenser, but make sure that you do the new downloads here, and that will allow you to have the Steinberg licensing versions that come with version 7. So you could update to HALion 7 or HALion Sonic 7, but you also will need to update the content that comes with it as well. So I think even if you go to the HALion Sonic collection, see if it's broken down. So make sure that you download from the HALion 7 or HALion Sonic 7 those content titles, because the old ones will look for the USB E-licenser, but once you update to HALion Sonic 7 or HALion 7, then that license will run the new ones, but you're going to have to reinstall it. See, Gerald Ely is asking who still uses FireWire. So I missed some FireWire stuff. All right, so we see basic and unrelated question, but I've been composing in Cubase for around 5 years. However, I am now doing video games. Is there a way to link or send them to Nuendo like it's done between Cubase and Dorco? So you could just... when you go to open up a file, so, Nuendo is a .mpr file, like Nuendo project, Cubase is a .cpr file. So, but if you wanted to open up an NPR file, so let's come over here, let's get a projects. I'll say, okay, I think this one. So let's say I have a .npr file here. So this is upstream.npr. This is a Nuendo project. So Cubase can open up Nuendo projects. Nuendo can open Cubase projects. So the file formats are the same between them. So there's no migration or data transfer that's necessary. You could just open up the NPR or .cpr files directly. All right. So we see from Studio 7, can Yamaha emulate the incredible VL7M module based on physical modeling in HALion 7? I believe the only VL series that can compete with the SWAM engine by audio modeling. So I'm not sure if, like, how, you know, if the development team that worked on that at Yamaha is still around. So, but you could check with Yamaha. So, you know, Yamaha has announced that they are working on, you know, doing like a VSTi version of the latest montage release. All right, I know we had some questions that were sent in, so let's go ahead and move to some of those questions before we run out of time. Thanks for all the great questions from everyone. All right, so we had a question on if it was possible to increment and decrement the volume using a keyboard shortcut. So, like, and I think, like, a lot of times we want to come over here, we could adjust kind of like the event volume from the info line or just grabbing the center portion. But if we wanted to do this with a keyboard shortcut, we could come over to key commands, and what you want to search for is increment event volume. So let's say I want to assign a key command. Let's see, I'm running out of. So, but it's just going to be increment event volume to raise it, and then we'll choose decrement to lower it. I'll assign it on my MIDI remote quickly here so we can see it. So let's say I want this to increment. Event volume. I'll do it on this one here. And then we will choose to decrement. So if we want to do this from a control surface or your... So now I could come over here and decrement and increment the event volumes just by using that key command. All right, so we had a question. Hi, Greg. When I install Cubase 13 Pro, my new i9, and when it installs Microsoft Visual C++, the computer restarts. I've had a lot of problems with this. Can it help if I install 12 Pro, which I know does not create this problem? What do you think? Thank you. And this, so I think, you know, generally with these cases, I think if you just reinstall the Microsoft Visual Studio, you know, C++, the Visual C++ again, that generally will take care of it. So I haven't kind of run into that so much. All right, so we had another question. It says, hey, Greg, there's a song I'm trying to find a tempo of with sparsely located beats with tempo track. Is it possible to use the range selection tool to find hit points of a selection instead of the whole track, Cubase 12 Pro? So yeah, this is one of the new things that's available in Cubase 13. So if we go to, let's say we have our range tool here and I have my range selected. I think if we go to edit, it's under selection. Let me just project, maybe. Just want to do things in. All right, let me just find it here quickly. Okay, so here we could say range to next hit point. So as we just come over here with our range tool, we could just say select enlarge range to next hit point. So go to edit to select, and here you could enlarge range to previous hit point to next hit point from there. So that's how you could just automatically navigate to the range selection tools. Okay, so we had a question. Hope you're well. I'm running the new maxed out M2 Mac Studio, and I've been having some issues with CPU spikes. All my plugins are VST3. I don't have any crazy amount of them per track, 2 or 3 max. The project I'm working on is 50 tracks. This is what I have connected to my Mac Studio, an OWC Thunderbolt dock, 11 port with Audient Evo 4 interface, MIDI faders and MIDI keyboard connected to it, 2 SSD drives for samples and projects, Anchor USB dock for iLock, e-licenser, mouse, HDD backup drive I use for Time Machine. It says I have ASIO guard turned on and the buffer is 512. Am I missing something here? Everything seems to be running natively, but I'm still not getting the performance I was hoping for out of the Mac Studio. So, you know, one of the things I would do is sometimes just having so much being powered on your USB bus, you know, and whether it's going to be Thunderbolt or not, you know, I've just found sometimes, you know, taking different components away, like hard drives, can take a lot of power from your USB bus, and that could be causing a lot of kind of, you know, almost what seems like it's being lethargic. You know, it's like kind of running slow. So I would try to run with a minimum setup, and then it could be that, you know, maybe you have it connected to a USB hub that's going into your Thunderbolt dock, you know, and stuff like that. You know, having one extra thing that's taking up so much power, and sometimes I know on the Macs you don't have a lot of other options for powering, but I would try to remove some of those components, like especially the hard drives to start with, and see if that could kind of clear up some performance from you. All right, so we see, hi Greg, on the December 5th, 23 live stream, you demonstrated some features with the chord pads under the player mode presets. Your list included guitar mappable sequences and piano mappable sequences, from which you selected a couple examples. I have QBasis Pro 13, but I do not have those options in my list. Do they come with 13? If so, how do we load them? If not, how can I get them? Kevin Riley. So I could send these to you, I think, just in case you don't really get them, but you know, they do come with the chord pads. So again, sometimes people may kind of go over here. There's a number of different areas for presets within the chord pads, but make sure that you're right here in playing chords and that you select the patterns and then the preset, and then you should be able to open that up, and I have your email address. I'll just go ahead and show, I could share them as presets so that you could call them up, but I'll go ahead and email you those. I have your email, but they should just automatically show up. All right, jump back to our live questions. All right, we just All right, so we see from Diamond District Studios, question, Nuendo 13 Pro, is it possible when working on Dolby Mix via headphones to export just a stereo file at the end and keep the spatial feel of the mix? Yeah, so what you want to do... Let's see where I have this. Oh, here we go. All right, so let's say we have kind of our Atmos mix going on. If you have headphones, this may kind of translate over for you. Okay. Make sure I have... All right, let's see, let's get this to sound. All right, so let's say now I want to do this as Atmos, so I'm going to come over and let's go to we'll go to our project menu. We'll make this, go to our ADM authoring, we'll go to our setup assistant. Okay, and now I want, let's see if I'm maybe not at the right. Yeah, but what you want to do here is on the, I think it's on the standard bed. If what you want to do is to now route this out to your stereo output and then do an export audio mix down and then just choose the stereo, and that will kind of create a binaural stereo file for you that you can monitor with headphones. So, and I just did a, if you look under like the Greg Ondo Q&A tutorial videos, I just posted one a couple months ago just exactly on that procedure. All right. All right, so we see from Studio 7 asks, what is the purpose of the pads featured in HALion Sonic 7? All right, so let's just do a new project. All right, they just allow you to have different chords that could be triggered. All right, so we'll just come over here. So now, just check my audio connections one more time. So, yeah, I remember why I'm not hearing the Atmos. I didn't switch over my headphones for. Okay, so if we wanted to audition different chords to trigger, we could assign different trigger notes for these. And then if you wanted to take a snapshot of the chord, you could just now play a chord on the pads. So I think if you just come here, let's clear the chord. I'll do a snapshot chord. And then you could just now trigger particular chords directly from here. And if you're running through like a flex phraser, you could have different arpeggiators. So that's really kind of the reason for the chord pads. So you can just trigger those. All right. All right, so Michael Pierce running. Thanks for dropping in. All right. All right, so we see from Manuela77 says, in my hard disk, where's the path for all my tags and settings I've made in MediaBay, and how can I save them to use on a different computer in case of a QBase version change? So if you need to use it on a different computer, like later QBase versions will automatically read that. But if you go to like your application data folder on Windows, or if you go to your library folder on Mac, go to Preferences, and then you'll see your QBase 13 preferences, and then you'll see, I believe it's just your MediaBay offline, your MediaBay3.db, that file is the one. So you can migrate your MediaBay files from here, and that will, if you need to take it, migrate them to another computer, you could do it just like that. All right, so we see Cristiano Productions. How can Celmoni Melodyne follow the chord track in QBase with ARA2 extension? If I have an audio guitar track, I want Melodyne to change the chords based on the chord track. So I'm not sure if it does that. So I don't have a Melodyne license on this computer to test. But you know, a lot of times ARA2 doesn't necessarily. I'm not sure if it carries over the chord track or not. Or if it's just kind of an audio exchange, or if it's, I don't think it does MIDI stuff, but it could be mistaken. All right, so Yikes Boy asks, hey Greg, wondering about the latency that the Really Great Vocal Chain plugin introduces. Would you recommend using it only in the mixing stage if not able to direct monitor from their I/O? So it's really intended for mixing. I mean, you know, so I don't think most people would print all those different things or monitor through all the different components, but I think it's really, you know, the design intention is really for mixing. So. All right, so Keith Young asks, could you run through the new controls for changing colors of tracks, especially the one with the scrolling mouse? So if you want to change like the track color, you could hold down the Alt or Option key and use the mouse scroll wheel. So let's say if we're here, so Alt or Option key, or if you click with the Alt or Option key, you could get the color palette to kind of pop up right there. All right, so you see, using MIDI remote, can we use pitch bend to zoom in and out to navigate horizontally in the project? Thank you. So I'm not sure if it is going to, I think it still just transmits MIDI pitch bend data, and it's not necessarily. We'll give it a quick shot and see if we can get it going here. So let's see if I get. I probably won't have time to get it done, but I'll give it a shot real quick. So let's come over here to MIDI remote. Let's add MIDI remote. I don't think I have the right. I may have my MIDI remote being used elsewhere. Yeah, it's not showing. So yeah, my pitch bend isn't transmitting right now, so I probably won't have time to do that. I could see if I could get that going for Friday's live stream. All right, so I just see a quick question from Love QBasis. Can we listen to a 5.1 surround mix in a car? So some cars do it. Elliot Shiner had designed a car, Acura Integras, or Acura cars has the L's sound system, so that is designed for surround, but most cars don't do that. But some do, so Acuras, you can do that. All right, so with that, we are just about out of time. I want to thank everyone for all the great questions that they've asked. I want to, and thanks for spending your evening, morning, afternoon learning more about Steinberg products. We'll be doing this again on Friday, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. We will be going all the way through the 22nd. That'll be the last live stream of the year. I want everyone to please stay safe and healthy, and we will be back on Friday. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. And see how many live attendees we have pop in and out. So 2,561. So thank you so much, and we'll see you back on Friday. Goodbye.